See you later, weekly Dartscast. If you don't watch that podcast, guys, go watch it. Very good podcast. Probably the best one out there at the moment.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me this week, a guest co-host. He's back in the hot seat in the absence of Burton DeWitt, who's away this week, back by popular demand as well, the one and only Andrew Sinclair of Inside the WDF fame. Andrew, it's been a while since we parted ways after a few days at the Circus Tavern for the seniors. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good, thank you, mate. Nice to be back on, and yeah, good time at the Circus Tavern, good time at the Dartford Sports Bar. And yeah, been a busy 6 months of darts and everything else in between.
Good man, great to catch up with you. And before we get into the show, I did want to give a quick shout out as well to one of our listeners. I was at a Friday night competition local to me. A young chap came up to me. We'd played each other a few weeks earlier, and he gave me a good hiding 3-0. My only highlight was attempting ball surround bull on 100. I got the first two parts, but the third dart was closer to the next board along than it was to the ball. But anyway, I said he was a listener of the show, and a few of his teammates in his uni team are as well. So shout out to Daniel Marston and the rest of the guys in the team. Appreciate the support and hope you enjoy this week's offering. And there's lots to get to. It's been a busy week in the world of darts. We're going to get onto the Pro Tours a little bit later on, but we'll start with a look back at the World Seniors Matchplay from the weekend, and Leonard Gates completing the hat-trick, beating Jim McEwen in Sunday night's final. It's a third seniors TV title in a row for him. And the question will be now, we are still 3 or 4 months off, but if you were the soldier, if you were Leonard Gates, would you be considering another crack at Q School to try and join the PDC's elite, or do you stick with the seniors and try and defend those titles in 2024?
It's an interesting one, really, because I think the conversation now, certainly online, I guess, in the darts community, is if anyone shows a hint of ability or a hint of promise, they should go to Q School. They should be on the Pro Tour. And obviously, that makes sense. People want the best players in the world to be on the Pro Tour, but Pro Tour is also a brutal environment, and it's not always the right thing for people at various points in their career. You think Leonard's 52 now. He's absolutely dominated the seniors tour this year. 3 titles on the spin, as you said. This past weekend in York, he hit the first 100-plus TV average in the seniors. He's got Windmill on board now. And I think the position he's in at the moment is actually probably better on the Pro Tour, where you're always trying to chase those wins, always trying to chase that money. I think as good as that is and as competitive as I think he might be, I think if you look at it now, he can play the senior stuff. And at the moment, he's the man to beat, and he's dominant, racking up quite a bit of good money. He's got the CDC over in America, which will unlock doors for him to potentially go back to Alexandra Palace. He's doing some exhibitions over in the UK with Modus. He's probably going to get invites to the Super Series as well. More invites. He's had some this year already. And he's able to still play the WDF stuff at home in America, sweep up on the cricket, play some soft tip stuff. I think he's just in that position now where everything's going really well for him. And I think if he stays off the tour, or, stays off the PDC route, he can obviously make the most of those. Now, there's no reason to say he couldn't go to Q School and have a go. But to me, I would probably look at it and think, you know what? I think where I'm at now and the way I'm playing, it's probably more kind of guaranteed success and exposure than the Pro Tour would be when you're in your early 50s.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And I've got to say, it is quite the run that Leonard Gates is on at the moment on the seniors. We've seen Robert Thornton. He went 2 out of 3 in the first year. Then he retained the World Championship. So that was 3 titles from 4. But Leonard Gates, he's gone one better. He's won 3 in a row, levelled up with Robert Thornton on that roll of honour, 3 titles each. And it all goes back to one Friday night in Blackpool, as many stories do. And in March, the Golden Ticket, a qualifier with one spot in the Champion of Champions to play Phil Taylor the following day. Leonard Gates made that trip over from the States, won the qualifier, capped off that weekend by winning the title. And a side note as well, if you look at that qualifier, all the matches that Leonard's then played in the 3 TV events that he's won, there's only one player that's took him to a deciding leg. And you know where this is going. The GOAT Co Stompe, 5-4 in that qualifier. Co, I remember following on Dart Connect, watching Co pop off the 112, the 157 finishes to go 3-1 up and getting excited that we might get to see him again. But Leonard comes back, wins it 5-4. And you look down the list of players that he's beaten on this run: Phil Taylor, Martin Adams, Richie Howson to win the event in Blackpool. Moving on to Yeovil, the Masters, Mark Durbridge, Chris Mason, Robert Thornton, Richie Howson again in the final. And then at the weekend, just gone, Colin McGarry, Paul Hogan, David Cameron and Jim McEwen. So there's a real mix of players there, some legends of the game. And then there's players who are making their name in the seniors, like Richie Howson beating him in 2 finals and David Cameron as well at the weekend. And you mentioned it, setting that new best average in a seniors match on TV with that 101. And I think statistically this past weekend, it was the best that Leonard's played over those 3 events, a 93, close to a 94 average over the weekend. And if he was to bring that to the Pro Tour, you'd say he'll do pretty well. He'll easily keep his tour card. He'll get into that top 64. But I think that the answer does boil down to Leonard's own preference. He's got all the options in front of him. He hasn't got to pick one route and stick to that. He gets to decide, basically. So if he doesn't want to go to Q School, he can stick to the seniors. He can play those 4 weekends a year, the Modus, the WDF, the CDC, all those other events. They are going to still keep you busy. And at the same time, you can pick and choose. You haven't got to commit to all of them. You can maybe play in a few of those tours, or you can play in all of them. But if you were to go to Q School, get your tour card, you really do have to commit, don't you? Because we've seen before players win tour cards and then hardly turn up, and it kind of feels like a wasted tour cards in some respects. And I don't think Leonard Gates would do that if he did get his tour card. I think he would commit to playing on the tour, but it's a big sacrifice. It's 15 weekends a year at least for the Players' Championships, the UK Open. That's another weekend, and then you've got Euro tours. If you get in them TV events, there's a lot of travelling between America and the UK if he was to stay there. So I think for us as darts fans, being selfish, we want Leonard Gates to go to Q School, get that card and commit to the tour, and then we can see more of him, because he is an entertaining player to watch. But I don't think anyone can begrudge him sticking with the seniors when he's having this level of success, winning 3 titles in a row.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And really, he's exactly what the seniors tour needs to be there for long term. You know, at the start, when it came back, it was the Phil Taylor show. It was basically an exhibition style where it was like, oh, you get to see Phil Taylor, you get to see John Lowe, you get to see Bob Anderson. But long term, those guys are going to go away. You know, John Lowe's packed it in. Bob Anderson's packed it in. Phil's contracted to play it through till, I think it's next year's World Championship or the end of next year. But you can sense the tournaments he's playing in, the frustration is growing because he's not playing as well as he used to or as well as he wants to. And he's not won one yet. We've had 7 of these and Phil Taylor's still not won any of them. And I think for someone like him who had so much success in his career, he's obviously frustrated by the fact that you're prepping for 3 tournaments a year, 4 tournaments a year, and then you don't win it. And obviously you then have to kind of move on from there. But long term, the seniors had to be about trying to find good darts players over the age of 50 that could then be the ambassadors for their tour and show that, you know, actually darts is a sport for all ages, and that, you know, there's real quality to be had in those players over the age of 50. And Leonard's shown that. He's come over from the States, not really made massive waves over here before. You know, he played at Lakeside last year, which is the first time he played on TV in the UK, played at Ali Pali at the end of last year. And then this year has won those 3 titles, and suddenly he's in that conversation of elite players. The same would be true of, you know, your mate Richie Howson. He was someone who was a good county player. He'd played a little bit of Pro Tour. He'd had issues, and he'd always sort of bubbled away without being a big name. But I would say now he's playing as well as he ever has, really. And okay, he's not won one of these seniors events yet, but he's always in the mix. You can rely on him for a mid-80s to low 90s average in every game. And it takes a big performance to beat him. You saw that, you know, this past tournament, Neil Duff and him had to go all the way. And Neil had to over 90 to beat him. So Gates and Howson are what this senior system was supposed to be about. So it's a real positive for them that Leonard's done so well and has won those tournaments. And really, they'll want to keep him because he will then kind of set the benchmark for for more guys from maybe North America to come over, like a Jim Long, for example. So yeah, it's a huge positive for them. And yeah, I mean, he has fun with his walk on, and he's entertaining to watch. And, you know, he's a good player. He's playing really well, and he looks like he's enjoying his darts, which, as someone watching it, you want people to be up there looking like they're having fun and they're enjoying it and enjoying the experience. And he definitely is doing that. And it's a big positive for the series.
Enjoying his darts. There's definitely a catchphrase in there. I'll have to think of that and try and get to it before the end of the show. Well, we'll finish up our chat with the seniors, and it's the second year of seniors events on TV now is in the books. We had that fourth one of the year at the weekend. So, Andrew, let's pick out some highlights from the 2023 events. I'm sure there's plenty to go off, especially from the few days that we had at the tavern as well.
Yeah, well, it's certainly not Keith Deller against Mike Huntley at the tavern, which I think made me question all of my life choices. Look, don't get me wrong, I enjoy a slow darts player and I enjoy, you know, slower throwers, but that game was something else. And I'm pretty sure I still hear that guy sat at a table in front of us saying, "Play your own game," all the time. It's just stuck rent-free in my head.
Good advice, though.
Well, absolutely is your good advice, but he still lost, didn't he? Sorry, Mike. No, I mean, the tavern was fun. It was nice to see. It was nice to experience all of it. Obviously, I was delighted to see Dennis Arbour back on the telly. Poor form from the broadcast team at, you know, BT to not let me show my sign, telling Dennis to slow down. But, you know, you win some, you lose some. But again, you know, Dennis is a really good player, someone who's played County Super League, never really done the tours in a big way. And, you know, the seniors circuit has been a good opportunity for him because it's not too many weekends. He's going to be one of the stronger players, and yeah, qualified for that World Championships and then got to the semis of the Masters that they did down in Yeovil. The Champion of Champions tournament on Channel 5 was good. It was nice to see the darts on a big sort of mainstream terrestrial channel, and having only 8 players was nice because it was a tighter format. You know, it didn't feel as long. You know, the World Championship with 32 players was good, but some of those first round games were a real chore. Whereas the Channel 5 one was super condensed, just the 8 players, really good standard for that. And, you know, I think the other one would be Jim McEwen because, you know, Jim's someone I've interviewed before, someone I've spoken to before, who's a sort of a late bloomer in the darts world in many respects. And when the seniors started, that was something that he was targeting to be a part of. He thought that the way he was playing, being a regular contender on the Challenge Tour and getting a lot of access on the Pro Tour, he thought he was going to be one of the strongest players on the senior circuit, and he got close. He was getting to the late stages of those qualifiers, those ranking events, grafting away, but never quite getting there. Did for this one, and I think even though he never quite played at his absolute best, you know, he's definitely capable of regular 90 averages. He beat what was in front of him, and he came back really strongly in the final. You know, he had a very poor start. You know, it was low 70s average through the first 3 or 4 legs. And then he really battled back and made a real fist of it and made Leonard work for it in the end. I know he lost 9-6, but Jim worked for it and he pushed. And it was nice to see him, someone who's tried and tried and tried, at that 7th one they've done now, actually get there and show what he's capable of and put himself in the mix for more of those tournaments moving forward. And I guess just one more would be seeing Bob Anderson's last game at the World Championship. It was nice to kind of someone I grew up, you saw reruns of Bullseye and you saw Bob Anderson and whatever. It was nice to see him have that last game against Andy Jenkins. He didn't get that one last 180 in the finger point, but at least we got one at the first Seniors World Championship.
No, he didn't get the finger point 180 for Bob, but he did get to sign that LP metal detecting product catalogue later on that day, which I'm sure was a first for him. There's not many firsts that Bob Anderson can do. He's done everything in darts. But yeah, some good picks there. And for me, there's only one place to start, isn't there? An evening that will live long in the memory. Going back to the Circus Tavern, me and you were there, Andrew, and seeing the main man, Coast Dompe, back playing on that stage at a moment I must admit, I never thought I'd get the chance to see as when I started going to tournaments and watching them coast career. was pretty much finished. He was winding down. He wasn't really playing anymore. But our listeners, they know the story of how I met Co at Lakeside. It was thanks to you, Andrew, for pointing him out at the hotel lobby that Sunday morning. But to see Co play in person, that was a special moment for me. So yeah, thank you to the seniors for inviting Co and giving me that chance. And the game didn't go Co's way. Not sure if the translation is 100% spot on here, but he told Dutch TV afterwards, after he lost to John Part, that in the practice room it went great, but during the match it felt like I had porridge in my arm. Well, Co, I feel like that every time I play, so don't worry, it happens to us all. And yeah, hard to top that for a favourite moment. But as I mentioned, me and you got to go to the tavern for those first couple of days and thoroughly enjoyed it. 4 sessions, 2 sessions a day, back to back. It was a tough task for us, but we powered through it, and it was great to see not just Co, but so many other players as well. All 32 players in the field. We saw them play at some point, and many of them I've not seen play before in person, but like you, grew up watching reruns or clips on YouTube. So good to see them. You've mentioned that Keith Della, Michael Huntley game, so I won't give that another mention. And aside from the Circus Tavern, really, I've got to say I didn't see a great deal of the 3 other events, just other things clashing with it. But the events seem to have gone down well. There's been some highlights there for us. We've had, you mentioned Dennis Harbour getting to the semi-finals of the Masters, beating Phil Taylor as well, was a special moment for Dennis. You mentioned Richie Housen as well, Mr. Essex. He definitely deserves another mention, getting to 3 finals, that the first 3 TV events of the year, and fingers crossed that 2024 is going to be the year that he gets that first one. So yeah, it's been some good moments, and I think I've got to say, going to the seniors as well for a weekend or a day or two, it's a good laugh, and the crowd are very knowledgeable, and there's no Yaya Colo Torre chance. It is darts fans that have got a love for the game, a passion for the game, and they want to see some of their favourites from years gone by do their stuff again on stage. So yeah, I've got to say, it's 2 years in now, but it's been a welcome addition to the darts calendar.
100%. I'm someone that is a naturally sceptical person. And I think when it got announced, it's sort of what I was saying before, I was worried about kind of the long term of the seniors. What did it look like once your Andersons had gone, your Lowe's had gone, your Taylors were winding down? And they've answered that. That they've had more and more players come in. There's less and less of the kind of invites, and the standard has gone up. The tournaments are really watchable. Obviously, Bobby George and Ray Stubbs are a highlight on the broadcast side. And yeah, I think, you're seeing more and more players over the age of 50 think, you know what, this is a great opportunity for me to kind of not have a second career, second life kind of thing, but, they're getting more opportunities now after maybe they thought those had passed them by. So yeah, I think it's a really strong place. And, one thing I just want to mention as well is this most recent tournament. Obviously, Martin Adams had to pull out late notice because his partner sadly recently passed away. Hopefully see Martin back on that circuit, next year, because I think for me, he's his win over Phil Nixon back in 2007. That's the reason why I love darts. That's the reason I'm a fan. And getting to see Martin, even though it wasn't his best performance when he beat Dave Prinz at the Tavern, getting to see him in person again was great, particularly as he's not doing the WDF circuit anymore. So he's not going to be back at Lakeside in a playing capacity. So getting to see him there for, potentially one of the last times was a really nice moment for me. So yeah, just big fan of the seniors, and hopefully it's going to go from strength to strength next year and beyond.
Definitely, and just echoing what you said there about Martin, sending our thoughts to him, and that's our thoughts on the seniors. Let's hear the thoughts from one of the co-promoters of the seniors, one of the bosses behind it. Here's our chat with Jason Francis. Pleased to say we're joined once again by the co-promoter of the World Seniors Darts Tour, Jason Francis. Thanks for the time, Jason. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Just recovered from York.
Great to hear. And we just mentioned it off there before we started this. It's great to have you back on the show. And when we last had you on, it was just after the 2022 World Seniors Matchplay, the last major of year one of the seniors. And as luck would have it, we are talking just a few days after York, the 2023 World Seniors Matchplay, the last event of year two of the seniors on TV. So how do you reflect on how this second year's gone for the World Seniors?
Yeah, I guess it's like I suppose it's like the second album, isn't it? You've got to kind of, you have to get over the novelty element where, look, this is a new thing, the Seniors Tour, everyone was excited again, Phil Taylor playing darts, seeing some old faces. And then this year has been more about, getting some foundations in, getting some stability, growing the tour away from the TV events, embracing some new broadcasters. And also, I think, as I've said before, making sure that we are just progressing at a sensible rate. And listening to our members.
After the match play in July last year, the build-up started for the next World Championship. Some 6 or so months later, we were seeing players being announced in an increased lineup for this year. 24 players gone up to 32 players. The big name, obviously, in our eyes was our very own Coast Dompe, who your team kindly asked us to record a video for to reveal his signing. So a big plus for the event having the GOAT involved. But in all seriousness, what was it like turning up to the Circus Tavern in February, the second running of the Seniors, the flagship event, and where it had all started 12 months earlier?
It's a special venue, and it's bizarre in that it's we've almost brought life back to it in darts history. The Circus Tavern will be looked upon as probably having, I hope people will look back and having sort of a rebirth. So it has the history of the early years and where the PDC really kind of based themselves for their main event. And then we've kind of come in and it's become our home for our biggest event. So, yeah, it feels like a little bit of reincarnation, if that makes sense. We brought the venue back to life again, and I say, yeah, can't wait to get back there in February. An even bigger event this time, brilliantly supported. And I think now we've gone from having to explain what the Seniors Darts Tour is to almost people accepting that it is part of the sort of darts makeup now.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough to be at the Tavern for the first 2 days of the event this year, and certainly enjoyed it as many other darts fans did. Robert Thornton defending the title that he won in the first year, and after that it was on to Blackpool, a new event on the Seniors Tour this year, the Champion of Champions. And back when we spoke in July of last year, you'd announced that a fourth major was coming for this year, but no other details had been confirmed. But it was funny, one of our listener questions during the chat mentioned about putting an event on in Blackpool, and that's where it ended up being.
Well, another iconic city for darts. Albeit we're probably a stone's throw from the Winter Gardens. We'd love to grow into that one day, but it felt right. It was a niche little event again with its own identity. The idea of the golden ticket, we could have never sort of imagined that the golden ticket was a chance to play Phil Taylor with a new broadcaster, Channel 5. But yeah, so it worked out really well, and the people of Blackpool really turned out for that event.
Yeah, you mentioned the new broadcaster, the Champion of Champions, being shown on Channel 5 here in the UK. And again, I remember when we spoke last time, you said that going into this year, you were in a much stronger position to attract broadcasters, having had that first year. So how pleasing was it to get another event on a free-to-air broadcaster with that one?
Yeah, I think it's so important when you consider I would say what is the perceived demographic of our audience. So the slight ageing population who might remember, but I always contradict that now because, so many young people are attending seniors events. But I think the Channel 5 for that event and bringing darts back to a free-to-air broadcaster where you don't even have to go and find the red button like you do on the BBC was tremendously important. And I think it was shown by the just staggering viewing figures for that event.
Yeah, it was good to see, and we saw some other new venues used this year as well. The Masters heading to Yeovil, the match play, as you mentioned, in York over the weekend. So how do you feel those two locations went in terms of ticket sales and what you were looking for? And are those two events going to stay there next year, or are you going to be looking elsewhere?
Well, I mean, as we stand, nothing is confirmed for the Masters and match play. I think that, in all honesty, Yeovil was a challenge ticket-wise. It was the hottest weekend of the year. You had Glastonbury going on down the road. Quite a few things went against us on that but a wonderful venue. And it was, part of our plan has always tried to spread the seniors around. So going to the West Country was important for us to do. Whether that one will stay there, I'm not so sure. I think York has real potential to build year on year. I think that the team at the theatre understand that for an event to work, it has to be a win for the promoter and the theatre. And quite often now, and I'm not levelling this at Yeovil, by the way, but there are many venues in the country we have spoken to that we've just felt they wouldn't give us a fair chance with all our costs of prize money, TV, everything, to make a return. And I think in York, we potentially have a partner group that could help us grow this event, because ultimately we want to keep events at venues. The Circus Tavern is sort of cemented as the home of the World Championship now. The Champion of Champions is back in Blackpool. So again, you're building your own history with an event and a venue. And I think we found some place that could definitely work for the match play. The Masters, I'm not so sure. In my head, I would still love the Masters to be at the lakeside, but the numbers just don't work.
That's fair enough. Well, speaking of venues for events, you've spoke to us before and on the broadcast itself about growing the seniors and looking to take events outside of the UK, and there was a fair bit of talk over the weekend about a potential event maybe one day in America off the back of Leonard Gates winning 3 consecutive tournaments on TV. So is there any movement on a seniors event going stateside, or for that matter anywhere else outside the UK?
Yeah, that's the next that's the next move for us, whether that be continental Europe or the USA. I mean, it would be crazy commercially to not look to see the success Leonard's had and not embrace that. We've got potentially 4 top class over 50 seniors darts players that we know about. In fact, I'm going to say 5, because I think a guy called Jim Long turned up at one and won one of our events, and I think he did well on the PDC one that was at Madison Square Garden. So you have Leonard Gates and David Cameron, 2 already winners on the World Seniors Tour. John Partt's darts have improved every time he's played, and he's certainly now living like a dart player again and putting some practice in. Larry Butler has never disgraced himself where he's come over. And as I say, Leonard says there's so many more we don't even know about.
Well, it'd be great to find them, and we've got a few questions, as I mentioned before we started, from our listeners as well, and sticking with the North American theme. The first one comes from Sam Miller, who asks, could we have a qualifier that takes place in North America for the World Seniors Darts Championship next year? Because you mentioned him, Jim Long, you've got Jacob Taylor, Chuck Pulio yet to make their TV debuts in the seniors, and following on from the success that Leonard Gates and David Cameron have had.
It's something we've been approached by a couple of federations, and funnily enough, with North America, we are in conversations with the CDC. It would be lovely ultimately if there are qualifiers all over the world and their seniors champions get to come to the Circus Tavern. The tour, just by its nature, is very much UK based at the moment. It's nothing we can do about that. We're only, as I say, 2 years in, but very aware that the 4 events are in the UK at the moment. I'm very aware that the majority of our tour players are in the UK. We do have some come in from Europe, and as I say, a couple of the American guys, when they've been over here for other things, have been to those. But I think it's a fair question, and we may be too early for this one. I think we've already announced our sort of qualifiers, but we haven't announced all our invitations yet. And it's important that it's an open conversation. If we feel that a federation or a body can sort of stage a really bona fide event here, and we were, and I'll tell you as well, we've had approaches from Mongolia on the same thing. I mean, I wasn't even sure they played that much darts in Mongolia, but there's a load of over 50s players over there that want to join the tour. So if I'm honest, I think probably not for this World Championships, but I think in the future we will absolutely spread our wings with the qualifiers.
watch this space. And the next one comes from Barry O'Donovan. He says, how would Jason respond if the PDC were to create a rival seniors tour?
I suppose it would be a compliment in sorts, wouldn't it? But I think that what's happening at the moment is that a lot of players on the seniors tour who are now having doubts about whether going to Q School is right for them. And, you know, I would never influence a player, but I think the only one who's probably nailed himself down is Robert Thornton, who's gone and look at the prize money I've won on the seniors. I don't want to be chasing ranking points and playing in cubicles in Barnsley and whatever. So for me, Q School isn't an option. There are also a lot of other players that probably still fancy a go at Q School, and you know, Leonard Gates could be one of them. You know, he threw 102 average in one of our matches over the weekend. You know, that, from what I understand, that's pretty good standard at the very top of the game. So I think that the more the seniors tour grows, the more that people will find that this is the place to come and play darts. I don't think there's enough money in it for the PDC to want to stop what they're doing. They have the professional side of the tour. The players seem to be working non-stop in events. And the other side of it, you know, of course, Phil Taylor is very much committed to the seniors tour for at least another 2 years. And, you know, you have to argue he's still the big draw.
Yeah, definitely. And following on from that, I know we had a question last time we spoke from one of our listeners talking about a potential collab between the World Seniors and the PDC, the Seniors World Champion getting into the Grand Slam. Has there been any talks in the last year between the Seniors and the PDC having that in the future?
No, there hasn't. And I think that, you know, from what I can see, the PDC players are playing for every day that's going. So I guess if you were a PDC player, you'd be a bit aggrieved if a player on the seniors tour turned up at a weekend, won an event and took a place that you've been grafting for all year. So no, there's been no contact or discussions.
That's fair enough. And one last listener question, and the great thing about these seniors events, we got to go to one this year and meet one of our long-time listeners and supporters of the show. I know he's a big follower of the seniors as well. Warren Allsworth, he says, well done to Jason and his team on a great year. When will the confirmed players and number of qualifiers be being released for the Tavern?
Well, it's already out there. So this year we are running, I think there are 6 qualifying spots, and then there are order of merit and money list. We did a press release probably, I think it was just after Yeovil, with a complete restructuring of our ranking and eligibility. We'd listened to the players in year one who were being punished ranking-wise by having early success. So in year one, Richie Howson wins the first qualifier, and he couldn't play in any more of the qualifiers, so therefore was at disadvantage with ranking points. So we responded to that and listened to the tour and said, look, you can play in everything. Everyone can play in everything. Now, ultimately, we still think that needs tweaking. So what we've done with the event next January, which is the qualifiers for the Tavern, is we've put more events in for money and ranking points, but the qualifier itself for the place at the Tavern will not carry any ranking points. So that means if you are a Robert Thornton who's come to the floor events, and he will feel bad at playing in an event for the TV spot he's already qualified for, and he was entitled to do that before. Whereas now we've said, well, okay, let's not have that situation, but let's try and make up the fact the prize money doesn't get affected, but those qualifier events are purely now for those TV spots, and they're free to enter. If you enter the weekend, you get a free spot in the TV event. There's no prize money and there's no ranking points, but it's an extra event we're putting on which carries the TV spot. So I garbled that a bit, but I hope that kind of made some sort of sense.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. There's your answer, Warren. And a couple more before we let you go. And looking ahead, I know there's still 2 more weekends of Open Series events before the year's out. The calendar a lot of it has been released for 2024. There's more events on the calendar as well, and I know you said to us before the goal was to try and get at least one event, maybe one weekend a month of activity for the seniors. Is that still the goal?
That's still the goal. I mean, next year, we talk about having not yet announced the match play and the Masters. Everyone needs to understand that there are two rather big sporting events next summer, Euro 2024 and the Olympics, plus the Paralympics. Now, for example, if you look at our broadcast partner this weekend, TNT Sports, they also own Eurosport. Eurosport are the host broadcaster of the Olympics in Paris next year. So there's every chance those two events will push a bit further on, because next summer we are going to be saturated with massive sporting events, purely with the Olympics and the football. So we have to think about that as well and be a little bit broadcaster-led. If they're going to be our broadcast partner, they're quite clearly not going to put on the Masters in June when they're covering every channel with the Olympics. So as it stands, we've announced all the sort of qualifying events to give activity every month. We've put a to be confirmed on when the final stage events will be for those two events, and it is because of that. Until the broadcast partners sort it out. But as I say, that shouldn't be. I would think by the time we get into the new year, that calendar will be complete, and it might even have some other stuff in it as well.
Good to hear. And lastly, before we let you go, almost 2 years in the books now for the World Seniors Darts Tour. 2024 promises to be another year of growth. So what are you most excited about with co-promoting the seniors for next year?
I think that the way the tour is growing, I mean, the challenge we have is that time waits for no one. So, you've seen the likes of John Lowe and Bob Anderson. It was fantastic to have them in the first year. The problem was they couldn't sustain the averages and the standard as it went up. And we didn't want to be damaging legacy with those. So they needed to become ambassadors and still involved. And John and Dennis Priestley were with us this weekend. But more players are turning 50. So John Henderson made his first sort of TV event for us this weekend. Another player that may, or I'm guessing he will go to Q School, but if it doesn't work out for him, how fantastic will that be for the Seniors Tour? There are certain players, again, I'm looking through, who potentially could lose their PDC Tour card. Well, now there's the Seniors available. So that's what I'm more excited about. I think that the standard is getting better because the averages don't lie. The people who are joining the tour are getting more opportunities. And, as I say, we continue to build the tour.
Exciting times ahead. Well, Jason, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. Appreciate the time, and congratulations on the second year of TV events for the seniors, and wish you all the best for the rest of the year and what is to come.
Thank you for your support. Take care.
Attention all dart enthusiasts, this is ZR, your host from In the Mud Sports, and I have an exciting announcement for you. Are you ready to take your darting experience to the next level? Introducing In the Mud Sports, the premier online darts league for amateurs like yourself. We're not your typical darts league, it's an experience like no other. It's where you can showcase your skills, make new friends, and have an absolute blast. We have a vibrant community where camaraderie is key and darts meets pure enjoyment. Whether you're a singles player or love the excitement of team events, In the Mud Sports has got you covered. We are perfect for amateurs who want to have fun and improve their game along the way. It is your time to shine. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to elevate your darting experience and join 80 plus players from all around the world. Together we'll create unforgettable moments on and off the oche. You can catch all updates about where we are going live next through Twitter and Instagram at In the Mud Sports. See you guys there.
Thanks again to Jason for joining us. Now we're going to look back at the Pro Tours took place over the weekend and into the start of the weekend. We've got to start off with the winner of Sunday's event back in the winners' enclosure, Callan Rydz, winning Players' Championship 19. How important was this title for the Riot?
I think it's really important for him because you think back to end of 2021, he had that tremendous run in the World Championships, got through to the quarterfinals and lost, I think it was 5-4 to Peter Wright in that quarterfinal. He really seemed like he'd put it all together and he was, on an upward trajectory after that point. And he's not won a title since before that World Championship run. This was his first title in almost 2 years. And it seemed to me, with everything that's kind of been going on with him, some of the things he's posted on social media, his form, he seemed like a player who was on a downswing, in recent months. This year, he's dropped 6 places in the world rankings. He's defending a lot of money at the end of the year in the World Championships. And he was someone I was looking at thinking, he's not in a great place form-wise. And you could see, the start of next year, he's massively slid down. And then suddenly he's got work to do. So this title, I think, changes the conversation around him. It gets the monkey off his back because he's back as a winner. It's a positive conversation around him now. And I think for him, it changes his mentality. It's been obvious with the things that he's posted that he's been struggling with his form, maybe things outside of darts as well. But he seemed, happy. The interview and stuff after he won, he seemed happy. He spoke about using new darts, slowing himself down a little bit. And I think there was a much more positive vibe coming out of him after, Players' Championship 19 on the Sunday. He got to a semi in the event the next day as well. There was a much more positive vibe coming from him. He's in a World Grand Prix spot now, which obviously is another TV appearance, good opportunity to potentially make some money in a tournament that's typically a lot more wide open. So I think, it's hugely important for him. And I think he's in a much better place now as we get to the quote unquote business end of the season when you really need to be at your best.
Yeah, can't argue with that. And it's funny you mentioned that run that Callan had at the World Championship coming up for 2 years now. So we will be trying to defend that prize money in December and into January if he gets that far. But I was just actually having a look at it now, and some of the performances that he put together, that string of results, the 102 average 3-0 against Brendan Dolan, a 98 average 4-0 against Nathan Aspinall, and 96 average 4-1 against Alan Asuta. But that quarter-final against Peter Wright, lost it 5-4 with a 97 average. And it probably goes down as one of the most underrated games in the World Championship because not many people talk about it now. But I remember Callan was 2-0 up, 3-1 up, 4-3 up, and the game ended up going deep into that last set. I think it went 4-2 to Peter Wright in the end. So it just shows you how close Callan was to becoming a world champion that year. And not far away at all. If he'd have got past Peter Wright, I think it would have been Gary Anderson in the semi-finals, and which again would have been another tough game. Gary was playing pretty well that tournament, and if he'd have got past him, Michael Smith, and at that point Michael Smith was still trying to win his first major. So again, that game could have been a coin flip given how well Callan was playing at the time. But like you say, it was an important run for Callan, an important few days, getting to a semi-final the day after winning that title as well, so backing it up as well. And I think take out what this could do for him getting into certain events. I think just for him as a player, and you mentioned it there, it has been a challenging time for him. 2023, parts of 2022 as well. But I think back to the springtime and some of the comments that he was coming out with on social media saying that he can't keep doing this and, thank you for everything, but I'm going to give the darts up. And he was saying he was struggling mentally and physically. And the tour, it can be a tough place, travelling every weekend, getting on planes, going to events and not playing at your best. And when you're going up against your fellow pros, the world's best players, if you're not at it, then you're going to be going home early. And in some cases, if you lose first round, you're going home with no money. So, it's a tough time of it when things aren't right for you personally. And we spoke on the show, Burton and I, the last few weeks about the summer break that players have had. A lot of tour card holders that didn't play in the match play or the World Series. It's been the best part of 2 months between events. And it was interesting. I saw Callan actually didn't play in the last lot of Pro Tours, the ones the previous weekend in Germany, skipped those events. So for him, he had the longest break out of pretty much everyone. And to come back, win that title shows the class that he's got. And okay, there was some averages that weren't at where he'd like them to be, but got to say, when he needed it the most, he found it. And I think the first round, 3-1 down to Mervyn King, won that one 6-4, 4-1 down to Robert Owen. He won 5 legs in a row to win that one 6-4. The semi-finals against James Wade, 4-3 down, rattles off 4 legs in a row to win that one. And Yeah, I think it was key times as well in games, pulling out a 4-visit or a 5-visit leg. There was a 12 darter to beat Ross Smith, and in the final, the very last leg gets pegged back to a decider. And you're thinking that the experience that Chizzy's got in more recent times, winning titles on the Euro Tour as well, a seasoned winner, is he going to pip Callan to the title in that last leg? And what does Callan do? 15 darter on throw to take the title. So, yeah, I think he'll take a lot of confidence from that. The semi-final run as well, and just mentioning social media as well, it looks like he's took himself off Twitter from what I can see. I'm not sure about any of the other social medias, and got to say, you can't blame him, can you? Players get abuse from all quarters from so-called fans when they lose a bet, or they just feel like giving abuse to players for no reason. So maybe that's been a factor as well. He's taken himself out of that situation where you can read those negative comments. You mentioned the throw, cue action. Sorry about that. He's changed his throw. He's sped it up. He's changed his darts. So it looks like he's put a lot of work in behind the scenes to get things right. And we saw the results over the weekend and into the start of this week. He had some good runs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it shows he's not the only one that you give yourself a bit more time. You see some of these players that are tremendously quick. I saw Wayne Mardle post something to this effect the other day, which was basically sometimes those super quick players, as they try and slow themselves down, the results might dip for a little bit, but then eventually they'll find that kind of right medium. And, you know, Ricky Evans this year has slowed down a little bit, and the results and the form has kind of come back up from where he was last year. And I think, yeah, as I say, Callan seems to be in a better place and a happier place. Which is a positive. But I mean, you talk about, you know, the tour being a strain. It's a massive strain for players. And, you know, we've seen Adrian Lewis walk away already this year. Nick Kenny played in the first Pro Tour on the Sunday and then went home after that and basically said after 10 years of travelling the world playing darts, whether that was on the BDO, the WDF, the PDC, he basically just decided that he needed a break and he was burnt out and, you know, just couldn't keep doing it. And obviously he was someone who, this was his second run of a tour card. He'd been playing a lot better this year than when he had the tour card the first time, but he'd run up on the end of so many close 6-5 losses. And I think it's just, sometimes you just have to, you know, he's holding down a full-time job as well. And it's, you know what, you need to walk away sometimes. And hopefully he can look at it in the new year, maybe same true for Adrian Lewis, and think, yeah, I've had however many months off now to focus on myself, focus on my personal life, focus on, you know, health, wealth, well-being, all that stuff. And if you're happy to play darts and you're ready to come back, then come back and enjoy it for what it is. Because it can be a really vicious circle if you're going to a Pro Tour, losing 6-5, go to another Pro Tour, lose 6-5. You know, you've been away for the whole weekend and you've won nothing. Even though you've probably averaged 95, 96 both days and you've just been pipped. So it's a tough environment. And it can become quite a dangerous thing if you go on a long run of poor form or near misses. But, yeah, Callan seems to be in a good place now. And obviously, fingers crossed, you know, we see Nick and Adrian back next year.
Hopefully we'll see Adrian and Nick back at it after a break. And let's just touch on the 3 days as a whole then in Barnsley. Callan was the title winner on Sunday. Monday and Tuesday, the title's going to players that we've seen a bit more regularly picking up titles. Luke Humphreys on Monday, a 9-darter in there as well. And then on Tuesday, yesterday, when we're talking, Gerwyn Price continuing his title winning run. But which players, aside from Callan, maybe you want to talk about the other 2 title winners, but who else caught the eye from the Players' Championship triple header that we've just had?
Yeah, there's a few actually. I was going to steer clear of the winners because they've obviously been in great form this year. Cameron Menzies was someone I did want to give a mention to because he's someone that I think has played really well this year. Some really good averages, consistently very well. If you look on the, you know, the averages for the year, he's actually ranking really well, but hasn't really got the results to show for it. But he got a quarter-final and a top 16 in the first 2 Players' Championships in that block, at an early exit in the last one. But the first 2, some really positive results and some really positive averages in there and good performances. So nice to see him do well. And yeah, I mean, you talk about the winners, but those second 2 Players' Championships, you look at the finalists, 2 first-time finalists. You had Daniel Closer in the last one from Germany, and Kevin Deutz from the Netherlands. And it wasn't just they got to the finals and it was, wow, okay, we've had some surprise new finalists. It was actually, hang on, they've got to finals and then both lost 8-6. So they were competitive and actually weren't very far away from winning their first PDC title. So congrats to those guys who have really shot up in the standings race for Players' Championship finals and so on. And I guess one other person as well would be Peter Wright, one of your favourites. His form on the Players' Championships this year has been absolutely rank rotten. Low averages, nowhere near qualifying for the Players' Championship finals. Just looked really, really off the boil. But in the last one, averaged 90 or above against Ian White, Karol Sedlacek, Stephen Bunting, Richie Edhouse and Luke Humphreys, and then lost in the semis to Daniel Closer. I mean, he's using the MVG dart, so I don't really know what's going on there. But that last Players' Championship seemed like a proper string of Peter Wright performances. And that's got to be a positive sign, given that we've got so many big tournaments coming up where he's got to perform. And he can't really afford too many more of these rusty performances that he's had in the earlier part of the year.
I mentioned that, what you said there about Peter Wright using Michael van Gerwen in darts. I mentioned that to my nan, who's also a big Peter Wright fan, and she was in shock. She couldn't believe it. She was saying, what's he doing that for? And I said, have you not heard of Dart Swap? Michael van Gerwen used Peter Wright darts and he went out in the first round. But no, she didn't believe that. But yeah, good to see Peter Wright get some wins under his belt. He still needs a lot more in the Players' Championship events that are left if he's going to make Minehead. He won it 2 years ago. He wants to make it so he can try and defend that prize money. He's going to be defending quite a bit with the World Championship coming off as well. So yeah, good to see Peter Wright get some wins. You mentioned the two beaten finalists on Monday and Tuesday. For them, first time getting to the final. Kevin Duetz, rode his luck at times. The last 16 game with Ross Smith, both players having multiple match darts in that decider, but Kevin getting over the line in 23 darts. And every credit to him, because the next game, 6-1, 96 average to beat Gabriel Clemens. And I think that was in the quarterfinals. So came through a close one with Mike Dedecker 7-5 to get to that final. And as you say, a close game in the final with Luke Humphreys locked at 6-all before Luke was able to pull away with those last couple of legs. But it's a final run which should get him a debut at Ali Pali and in the Players' Championship finals as well. And that could be all the difference that gets Kevin Duetz in that top 64, keeps his tour card at the end of the season. So a much welcome run to the final for him. And Daniel Closer, another surprise finalist on Tuesday. And before that run to the final, his biggest payday in the PDC, £1,250 on the Euro Tour, getting to the first round. And looking at his results in the Players' Championship this year, it is his first year on the tour with that tour card. And the furthest that he'd got before Tuesday was the second round. And he'd lost a fair few games, 6-4, 6-5. And we spoke about it. It can be disheartening losing 6-4, 6-5 all the time. And even the day before that run to the final, we lost 6-5 to Raymond van Barneveld, averaged 98. And Barney in that decider needed a 13 darter to beat him. So, and Daniel was waiting on 32 to break new ground and get to the last 32. But as it turned out, that day would come the next day, he'd get to the last 32. And fair to say, put in some impressive performances after that, beating Gabriel Clemens with a 100 average 6-4 in the second round to get to that last 32. And then beating Michael Smith in a decider and looked like a great standard as well. Michael Smith leaving 50 after 12 darts and Daniel Closer taking out 100 in 2 darts for an 11 darter to win it. So some impressive darts there from Daniel Closer and some impressive scalps as well. He also beat Adam Gavlas, Chris Dobie, Peter Wright in the semi-finals. And again, 100 average in that one and losing out 8-6 in the final to Gerwyn Price. No real disgrace in that one. And again, he's someone that has put himself in contention for some of these big events. The World Championship, I think he's £1,000 off that. He's going to be in the German Super League, so he'll be going into that feeling more confident after a deep run on the Pro Tour. So every chance we could see Daniel Closer in the World Championship this year. And just lastly, a nod to a couple other players. You mentioned Cameron Menzies, some of the performances he was putting in over those few days, the 104, 106 averages, 107 averages. And I think it's just Cameron Menzies all over, isn't it? One day he'll go from averaging 107 to 78 in his next game. So some good stuff that we'll take out from that from Cameron. And another Scot, Gary Anderson. You look to the last Players' Championship yesterday, started the day 100, 108, 107 averages. So you're thinking, could this be a title run for him? Next game averages 105, loses that game in the last 16 to Daryl Gurney, who averaged 106. And what a game this looked like as well. Daryl Gurney taken out in that game alone. Checkouts of 121, 110, 161 and a 160 to win it with Gary Anderson on 8. So, yeah, just shows you the standard that there is on the Pro Tour now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I certainly thought Gary was going to win that last one, so I was a bit disappointed that he didn't. I think I just assume he's going to win every Players' Championship, and then he never does. So, but another Anderson, Vladimir Anderson, who is not someone that you guys have spoken a lot about since he got his tour card. It's not someone many people have spoken about. He actually won his board for the first time in that first Players' Championship, and they weren't spectacular performances. He wasn't chucking out 104s, 105s, but I was like, good for him that he's actually strung together more than one win and achieved, he's actually achieved some really positive results. So that was positive. And I would say the only other person I wanted to mention was Jules van Dongen. So he hasn't had a huge amount of success his sort of 18 months on the tour so far, but this past weekend, the last few Players' Championships, he's been starting to show signs of better form. Had a good run, in one of the Players' Championships, qualified and qualified today actually for the last European Tour of the season, and it was 2 ton plus averages in his 2 games today to qualify for that European Tour. So positive signs for him. He's probably going to lose the tour card at the end of the year, but if you can finish that second year in a good place and in a positive place, you've got far better chance of winning that card back in January, February, if that's the path you want to pursue. So it was good to see Jules get some good results because he's a lovely bloke. And the ability is definitely in there. And I think, it's probably lost that he's still so new to this at a top level that it's almost as if he's gone through that adjustment phase. He had a great rush of success early. First year on the Pro Tour was, a learning curve. And this year, it's like he started to put it together again. You've seen his performances. The CDC events have been really good. He's got the last block of those this weekend. I'm not sure if he's playing or not, but he's got those. And, the Pro Tour performances are lifting as a result of that and certainly moving in a positive direction. So I was pleased to see that.
Well, that was our look back at the Pro Tour, and the Pro Tour continues this weekend. We've got the European Tour event in Germany, so we'll be looking back on that next week. We'll be back in a moment with any other business with Andrew, but before then, let's get to our final guest on this week's show. Is the reigning WDF Men's World Champion. He got to the semi-finals of the World Seniors Matchplay this past weekend. Here's our chat with Neil Duff. I'm pleased to say we're joined once again by the reigning WDF Men's World Champion, Neil Duff. Thanks for joining us again, Neil. How are you doing?
Cheers, Lyle. It's always good to be on. Yeah, I'm doing well. Keeping busy. I'm glad to be home for a week or so.
Good to hear it. And as I was saying just before we started, we last had you on the show just after you won Lakeside, April 2022. We introduced you as the newly crowned World Champion. You've had a year and 5 months of it now. So what has the last almost year and a half been like as World Champion?
Busy. I probably didn't realise how busy I actually would be. A year and 5 months, 168 flights. Australia twice. Yeah, it's been busy. It's in fairness, I think I'm actually really only starting to get used to it now. To get used to time management, and it's more so time management when I'm at home.
Yeah, and you mentioned 168 flights. So I've got to ask you, you're going to try and get it up to 180 before you go to Lakeside?
It could well happen. I've got a busy few months or a few weeks coming up anyway. So I have with Bridlington next week, and then I'm in Modus for a week at the end of the month. I think that's actually the week that the WDF World Cup's on as well, being Modus, getting paid. And then the week after, we're either doing Bruges or someone has actually planted the seed about I was going to Newbury for the Seniors Tour. And then we have Bristol then at the end of October then for the ADC finals day. So yeah, one of you could still happen, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll go beyond that. And I remember you said to us last time that you were going to milk it as much as you could, being the world champion. You've had more time than most, with this year's Lakeside being pushed back to December to try and milk it. So have you got anything else special lined up before December, or that you've squeezed in, or have you ticked off everything that you've wanted to do as world champion?
I think I never set any goals whenever I became world champion, but I kind of was just happy to sit back and take everything that was given to me. Obviously Australia being the big one, twice over there. Australia darts are fantastic. It's a great competition. So yeah, no, do you know, actually at the weekend past there in York, it was kind of the realisation of just how much my life has changed in the last 18 months. We're sitting on a Sunday afternoon and I've got Phil Taylor trying to suffocate me with a plastic bag in the players room. You know what I mean? And just to be able to sit in there having a bit of banter and a laugh with guys who I looked up to are now my friends, and yeah, it kind of puts things into perspective as to how far it's come.
You mentioned about not wanting to set any goals, if you like, when you become world champion. I do remember you said that your goal was to be a good world champion, in your words. So what's your own assessment on that target 3 months before you go and try and defend the title?
I think as a player, yeah, I reckon I've been a good champion. And in fairness, not a lot has changed, because before the Lakeside, if I'm at a tour event, I'll still take the time out to speak to people that want to speak to me, to get a photograph, to get an autograph, whatever. But that hasn't changed much. Well, it's probably just there's 10 times more of it now. But yeah, I still try and I've always conducted myself well, and don't get me wrong, I have enjoyed it. If I don't defend it or retain it, I'm not going to be that bothered. It's opened up so many other doors with a few other things that yeah, I'm happy where my career is at the moment, and yeah, long may it continue.
Glad to hear it. And as we've said, it's been a busy last 17 months since becoming world champion. A lot of events, exhibitions, but one event that we didn't see you in was the Grand Slam, the PDC sticking with their own system, their own players, instead of reverting back to that cross-code element. Was there one point where you thought you might get into the Grand Slam, or did you think that was always going to be off the table?
I think probably a day or two after the Lakeside final, I kind of, as in tradition, where the Lakeside champion has always got, but I wasn't holding out for it. I wasn't disappointed when they didn't do it. I think the PDC, they're looking after their own players, and rightly so. So yeah, it would have been nice to play in. I think on 2016, 15, I came so close to qualifying for it when they had the qualifiers in Hull Town Centre, or Town Hall. And I beat some great players that night to lose out to my good friend and legend, Andy Fordham. And that kind of gave Andy his first and last, I suppose, TV appearance, which kind of, yeah, I'm kind of, I wasn't devastated that I didn't qualify, but I would like to have played in it, but to lose to that man, yes, we'll see. It might happen again.
We shall see. Well, let's get back to events that you have been involved in. And when we last spoke, you mentioned that you were eyeing up the World Seniors. You were close to turning 50, and this year we've seen you make debuts in a lot of those big events. So how does the Seniors compare to any other event that you've played in?
seniors events are brilliant. I really enjoy them. They just seem to have such a more laid-back feel to them. Either that there, or it's sitting in the players' room with these legends, and they like to talk. Phil Taylor, Robert Thornton, Terry Jenkins, they all like to have a chat about the past, all the stories. So I think maybe just sitting back and listening to these stories from whenever they were top of their game and some of the antics that they get up to, I think that sets me at ease, which makes it easier for me to play. And in fairness, the production squad, the guys from Modus and one thing and another, they're awesome. So they are, and they're just so easy to work with. Even Helen Chamberlain, who I absolutely love to bits. Speaking to her on the stage is it's so easy. I might as well be sitting in the pub. and that's the whole part of it. It's so relaxed. Even the following's got a real family feel to it. You'll never hear boos and whistles, and generally they're all brilliant, and that's why I kind of, if you've seen it while I'm actually on stage, I'll try and interact with the crowd a wee bit, and it makes it fun, and I say I do it because I'm pretty much more laid back, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'm already in the 2024 Seniors World Championships, the Circus Tavern in February, and hopefully I can maintain, or the invites will come in to carry on with the TV events.
Yeah, it's good to hear about the invite for next year. And I was at the Circus Tavern for a couple of days, the first round of the World Championship this year, mainly to see my main man Coast on pay. But I've got to say that easily the tie of the first round was you and Lisa Ashton. So what have been your personal highlights from this first year getting to play in those events?
Yeah, in fairness, I haven't had it easy. The draws haven't been easy. Lisa's Lisa, you know what you get with Lisa. You play top of your game or you're going home. So, it was a cracking game. It was nice on debut to go out there and actually put a show on. I think it held me in good stead with the organisers, one thing and another. I lost to Robert Thornton, which I put right this weekend. The next one was the Masters. Lost to Richie Howson when I really, really shouldn't have. I was bossing the game, but fair play, Richie. Richie's one of the nicest guys in darts you'll ever meet. He's such a really laid-back, humble guy. So I lost to him, and I put that right this weekend. Felt a bit flat, short for the semi-finals, but hey-ho. I'll still be looking to get one of those under my belt. I did actually play the tour event in Viva Blackpool, after there was kind of the golden ticket event for the Champion of Champions, and then played one of the tour events, and I won it. I actually played Coast Stumpy in it, and I had a chat with him, and his son was there, and really, really nice guy.
Yeah, he is the legend, and with yourself, we can see you're getting closer to picking up one of those titles on the TV. And we've got to say as well, from the seniors, that we've seen you switch up your walk on as well. You used to have Welcome to the Party, which Josh Rock has been using as well, but now you've gone with Two Tribes. Talk us through the change.
I think you pretty much talked yourself through it there. I had it swiped on me, and I decided I'm not going to get into it too much. I didn't think it was very nice, but I was like, I'm good friends with Darrell Gurney, and I got chatting to Darrell, met Darrell at the match play last year, and I said as much as I'd love to use Sweet Caroline, I wouldn't do it out of respect because it's his walk on. So it didn't work out like that there. I'm not going to, I didn't feel comfortable holding on to it, so I actually went to another Let's Get Ready to Rumble for one competition. It wasn't for me, and I think the Two Tribes is good. And in fairness, the production team and Paul Starr, they have it down to a T where he does the kind of his intro over the top of the orchestral bit, then the pop bit kicks in, and I feel comfortable with it.
Excellent. Well, let's circle back to the WDF, and at the weekend you gave our show a new name, the Nick Rolls Podcast, instead of the weekly Dartscast. We'll let you off not giving us a shout out, but what did you take away from the interview that we had with Nick recently?
In fairness, it all came across very optimistic. I actually, for some reason, had it in my head that Nick was going to Australia, and I thought I'd be able to get a chat with him. But like Nick said, I have so much respect for Nick because he's doing a thankless job. He's got so much on his plate. He's trying to go over the mistakes that was made by the last organisation. The Lakeside that they put on was absolutely faultless. It was brilliant, and it was. I think we talked about it before, you and I, that it was almost a miracle that it actually even happened. But yeah, I know there's a lot of work behind the scenes. I have been outspoken, but that's me. That's a lot of people. Maybe some people don't like me for it, but if someone does a good job, I'm as quick to tell them so as I am to tell to pull up whenever things aren't going well, or mistakes are being made, or I can have my input to it. If it's constructive criticism, that's all it is. It's nothing personal. I want to see the best for any organisation that I play in, and they'll always have my back until such times as I'm not with that organisation. So. Yeah, Nick knows I'm here anytime he ever needs a hand or advice or anything out there, and hopefully I'll be seeing him before long.
Yeah, let's hope so. And fair to say that you're not the only person that's been outspoken when it comes to the WDF on social media. We see it from fans, other players as well. And I guess for yourself, being the organisation's world champion these last 17 months, we've seen the World Masters get cancelled this year. Has it been difficult at times to bite your tongue when there's been those tough decisions and those setbacks happen?
Yeah, sometimes it is. You would find out, actually, I would see something on social media and would start typing out a point of view, my point of view, or my opinion on it. And then I get to the point where I go, this isn't really worth the cry, because you always get the sofa experts, as I call them, that don't go to any darts competitions, but they're very great to sit and have opinions on things, you know. I think I deserve an opinion because I travel, because I go to the tour events. Yeah, it's just, I want to see the WDF do well. I really, really do. The Masters was unfortunate, but wasn't a complete shock, in fairness. I think looking forward, it should definitely go back to the original format. The original format worked. Also, my opinion, and I'd say probably a lot of people won't be that popular though, take it back to bringing the seeds in at the latter stages. TV deals want that. TV deals wants the big names there. So if it's easier to pick up TV deals and major sponsorship, televised events with the big names in the WDF there, then take it back to how it was. The last year I played in it, 2017 to 2019, I went through the qualifiers, but the seeds only came out at the last stages.
Well, we shall see if those changes happen. And getting back to yourself, I'm sure there's been a lot of special moments as world champion. Is there one in particular that you can put your finger on and say that was the most memorable, the most special, the one that meant the most?
I suppose barring the actual Sunday night when I won it, which, yeah, of course I'll never forget. The homecoming, the reaction from people when it happened, that's what nips at me more than anything else. It's like I had people in bars and pubs and clubs were videoing the audience as it was being televised, and that's why if I'm sitting on a plane, I'll go through them videos, and that's what keeps me warm and gives me the little buzz that I need, you know. I don't know. I suppose I'm just grateful for all the doors that it's actually opened. You know, I don't think the seniors things would have been as easy for me if I had them in world champion. But I like to think that the biggest moments are still to come.
Yeah, good answer. And two more before we let you go. Closer to home, you obviously become the first darts world champion from Northern Ireland when you won the Lakeside last year. We know other players in the PDC, they're making big strides as well from Northern Ireland. But what have those achievements had in terms of an impact on the game in Northern Ireland? Have you noticed the standards gone up? Are more players taking up the sport? More people noticing you on the street as well?
The thing is, I see less of darts in Northern Ireland than before the Lakeside because I'm not living here. I'm not on the international team for Denmark this month because I only played one county game. Just because it clashed with other things. ADC has kicked off in a big way here in Northern Ireland. We started off, there was one, then there was 5 for the last series. I think we've now got 11. So it's kicking off, and there's a lot of guys I've seen through them there who are pushing on, and I can see a difference in their game. So it probably has motivated a lot of the younger players that after what I had done that it's possible. So that they're going out and they're putting more hours in and they're playing more competitive darts. And, don't get me wrong, they all still want to beat me. Like the target's still on my back.
And lastly, you've probably lost count of how many flights that you've been on for the last couple of years, but you said earlier 168, but I've got to ask you the question, have you ever clapped when one has landed?
Yeah, it just goes to prove that people do read my newsfeed. I'm actually compiling a pamphlet on the Idiot's Guide to Travel. And it's just, with all them flights and sitting in airports and stuff like that there, I've started to take notes on things, and hopefully I can get this off the ground. But yeah, there's a few things that actually really get on my goat, and that has to be one of the biggest ones. So I was talking to Bobby George about it on Sunday, and Bobby, he's kind of under the same idea. There's a certain kind of person that does that sort of thing.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's on my darts wish list now, is to be on the same flight as you, and then when it lands, I'm going to give a round of applause just for you.
Well, you can expect the dirty look.
Well, Neil, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. Appreciate the time, and congratulations on what you've achieved since becoming world champion. We wish you all the best these next few months ahead of that return to Lakeside and trying to defend that title.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lal. Always a pleasure having me on. We'll get a catch up at the Lakeside, hopefully.
Thanks again to Neil for joining us, and we'll finish up the show with any other business, as we have got a guest co-host on with us this week. As I said, Burton's away. We've got Andrew Sinclair from inside the WDF, and a few things we've got to ask on behalf of our listeners. When are you going to pull your finger out and bring back your podcast? And we'll touch on the work that you do with the WDF, helping out with their website and social media. You've got the World Cup coming up at the end of this month in Denmark. I believe you're going to be there as well. So must be looking forward to a little trip to Denmark.
Yeah, so on the podcast front, I think it's about a year ago since I actually took a break from doing it. I think I want to bring it back. Obviously, where I am at the moment, I'm very busy, with my working life and whatever. So time's at a premium. But yeah, I'm aware you would like me to bring it back. And even my mum the other day asked me when I was going to pull my finger out and start doing it again. So, you have to give the people what they want. So hopefully, World Cup onwards, as we ramp up to Lakeside, I will be making a few more people's ears bleed. So there you go. In terms of the World Cup, though, yeah, I mean, that's something really exciting. It's the first time I'm going to be going to a WDF tournament outside of it, a World Masters or a World Championship. So really cool to see how that all works. We've got 54 countries coming over to Denmark, which is really good because it's the first World Cup in 4 years, and Denmark's not a cheap place to go. So for those countries that have got to come from a lot further afield, it's obviously quite a big expense. So yeah, 54 countries. 9 days in Denmark, I think, in total for me and the other people on the WDF team. So yeah, it's sort of there for websitey things, social things, but also as a kind of a guest, really, to see how it all works and kind of be involved. Nick Rolls has told me that I'm going to get roped in to do some of the marking, which I don't mind. But it just depends what I'm asked to mark. So I think some of those team games, some of the early round team games might prove a strain on, I've got a bad back, so don't want to be stood up for too long. But no, I mean, the World Cup should be brilliant. It's going to be a tremendous collection of players, some really strong countries, some really strong lineups for the countries. A lot of players there that are going to be involved at Lakeside later in the year. So it's going to be a really good opportunity. And I think, for all the developments in darts over the last few years, the WDF still has that global reach that really, okay, the PDC does have it as well, but the WDF's able to facilitate a lot more for the countries around the world, and really give them a platform and help their national federations try and grow the game. So I think it's going to be a great showcase of what the WDF's all about and what it can be and what it can bring to the darts scene moving forward. And I'm looking forward to being a part of it and continuing to help the WDF team moving forward ahead of, going back to Lakeside in December.
9 days in Denmark, plenty of time to get a podcast or two in there and maybe a bit of commentary as well. We love hearing you on the commentary as well whenever you get the chance. And you spoke about the WDF. I'll give a mention to another organisation. We try and cover all the darts on here, and to our friends at the Modus League. And another shout out, Rhys Griffin, who a player that's playing in the Modus League this week. As people know, I moved up here to Bolton and I've joined a team that took me under their wing that play on a Thursday night from work, and Rhys plays for their team. And yeah, it's been fun to follow him in the Modus League this week. It was, I think it was Tuesday this week. I walked past the canteen on my way to lunch, and there was just people in the canteen glued to the plasma screen. I was like, well, what are they watching? It was on the advert break, whatever it was. Came back a couple of minutes later, they're all watching Rhys on the Modus. So it shows you the power of the Modus League. So yeah, good luck to Rhys for the rest of the week. Hopefully he can make it to Saturday to the finals. And just lastly, before we go, we should say a big thank you to our guests for joining us, to Jason, to Neil for their time, and our support as well from Darts Corner. This podcast brought to you in association with them. They are the #1 online darts retailer, 30 different manufacturers. Go and check them out. Link in the description. And we can reveal as well, for our listeners this week, you can get 10% off at Darts Corner. Just use the code DARTSMAD, all one word, and that is going to run until the 12th of September. So not long to use that code. Do get involved. Check out what they've got on the website. Lastly, thank you to everyone for listening. We appreciate the support. Thank you to you, Andrew, for stepping in for Burton this week. Looking forward to seeing you at Lakeside, if I don't see you before then, for that first weekend of the WDF World Championship. So hang tight until then. A pint of Guinness at the Lakeside Hotel. Can't wait to enjoy that. And before then, make sure everyone, you enjoy the darts.